Heal Yourself with Sarah Dawkins, episode 42, with guest Skylar Acamesis. Skylar is a master medical intuitive, creator of medical intuitive technique and cutting-edge healing modality, founder of the Medical Intuitive Association, master Theta Healing, instructor, nutritionist, author, and registered hypnotherapist. She has over 20 years of experience working as a spiritual healer, speaker, and facilitator. She is a regular speaker at a large international conference and events. Skylar practices from her online medical intuitive clinic, and her main specialty is medical intuition and wellness business mentoring. She also runs training courses in medical intuition and theatre healing at all levels. Welcome, Skylar. Thank you for joining me on Heal Yourself.
Hi, Sarah. It's such an absolute pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this all day.
Oh, fabulous. I'm so pleased you could make it. I believe you've healed yourself of some health problems. Would you like to share with the audience what that was and how you did it?
The first one, I got diagnosed with an underactive thyroid when I was only 10 years old.
Wow.
And they couldn't figure out what it was, but I had bruises all over my body. It caused the lack of oxygen to my brain, caused dyslexia and dysgraphia. And they told me I would struggle with having children. The doctor actually told me I wouldn't have children. And it really threw me for a loop because until then, I'd always been very healthy. I was very sporty, even all the way through. So I was pushing myself and pushing myself. And I couldn't reconcile in my mind the idea of being ill for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Even as a little kid, I think my mum said that I told the doctor no. But I only managed to heal it when I was 20. And it was after I had a spiritual awakening when I was 17 years old. And I think that's when I went from being like a normal person, I call like normal people muggles, as it were, right? I was very much straight-laced, straight A SWAT of a student. You know, I was doing my law degree. I was very, still am very, I love to read. I love to study. I'm very focused and very driven. But by the time I reached 19, I was really nearing burnout because I was using force, to get through the illness. And I was losing. And it was really then that without even understanding what I was doing, I didn't know if there was a God. I didn't know if that was out there, but I knew that I needed help and that I was failing by myself. And then my boyfriend's father back then, he's an energy healer. And I didn't even know that existed. And by synchronicity, I ended up getting my first healing session in the middle of the Lake District from him.
Oh, nice.
And I went up like a supernova. I started seeing auras. I started seeing energy fields. I could hear my guides talking. I thought I had like schizophrenia. I was like, this is not for real. And I was quite lucky because I got a Russian psychologist through the NHS who told me that I wasn't crazy. I knew the difference between reality and illusion, but that I needed training and that spiritual gifts needed training. Otherwise, it could become an illness.
Yeah.
And within a year because thyroid is expression, right? So I wasn't allowed to express my gifts. I wasn't allowed to be myself. And a lot of gifted children are told that, their gifts don't exist. So it was kind of completely shut down. And when I would express any kind of, vision or clairsentis or clairaudience, I was always told it's your imagination, especially with like imaginary friends or beings like that. So my thyroid disappeared within a year. And I started at the same time working with a Chinese herbalist. There's actually a clinic called the Apple Tree Clinic in Dundee. I didn't have any cash back then, so I actually ended up getting a voucher from my friend. His mum got her migraines treated there, and she'd healed faster than she thought she would. So she had like 3 vouchers left, and then he gave me an extra 2 sessions for free with like the herbs and the acupuncture. And then it went away and it never came back.
Super.
But it really woke me up to the fact that there are solutions, real solutions, and that if I hadn't even tried, I would never have discovered them. I would have been in that level of suffering for the rest of my life. And I think it's what put me on the path to being a healer instead of just doing energy work or things like that.
Yeah, and I think so many people are stuck in that not knowing, and the doctor says, "Oh, you've got to take pills for the rest of your life, or we can cut it out or irradiate it," and people don't know what's out there, what alternatives there are, so they go through the treatments just because they feel that's what they should do.
I think ignorance is, especially ignorance around health, it's one of the most cultivated ideas. And even with my son, like I was in shock. If I don't know if you know much about kids' TV, but one of the series is called Cocomelon that he loves.
Right.
And he doesn't watch much TV, maybe on the weekends in the mornings or something like that. But that's one of the ones that has the least programming. But even that one, there was like 4 or 5 episodes I had to delete entirely because it was about, giving injections or medicines or taking tablets that children had to take to get better from illnesses. And I was like, I don't want this going into his brain. There's just nothing about this that I want. And then all of the ones about them making food with their parents, they're making pizza, they're making ice cream, they're making things that are bad for them. So I deleted all those too.
Yeah. Because it's programming, like you say, they're teaching children from an early age. This is the norm.
And this is connection. Like food is how we connect. So if he gets the message that he can only connect with our kids through pizza, through ice cream, then that's what he's gonna want, you know. But it's quite disturbing how early it goes in. And I know there's legislation that's meant to be coming through within the next 5 years that stops them marketing to children, but it's not been passed yet, and it needs to get passed as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty insidious stuff that, like I said, stops us from even looking for alternatives, makes us think we're quacks or woo-woos if we are looking for an alternative. And the medical system as it is, I'd say for at least 75% of illnesses, does not offer cures. It offers repression of symptoms.
Yeah. Repression, suppression. Yeah, absolutely. And it is. And people think that they're healed when they haven't got the symptoms. And actually the symptoms are the messages. So if you're shushing the symptoms with pills, your body's going to have to start shouting at you to take notice. But I think so many people have lost that mind-body connection and no longer attached to whether they want to call it their inner wisdom, the higher self, the divine, the energy, spirit, God, whatever the name they want to give it. People have lost that connection.
Well, so if I made a commitment this week that I'm going to be even more radically honest than I've ever been before. So here we go.
Okay.
Let's go like really deep here, because I think your audience can handle it, and I think you very much can, right? It's not been lost. It has been systemically ripped out. This is the result of over 2,000 to 3,000 years of colonization and of our personal connection, not just with the divine, but with ourselves. So first we disconnect from ourselves, and then we disconnect from God.
Yeah.
Right? And disconnection from God is the ultimate cause of disease, because when you are not able to be who you really are, and who you really are is that divine spark.
Yeah.
Right? Then you start living a lie.
Absolutely.
And that's painful. It is painful to live a life where you cannot be yourself. And then pain in the mind manifests as pain in the body, and off we go. Anger in the mind manifests as inflammation in the body. Inflammation is the root cause of every single disease on earth.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely right.
So it's and a lot of what they did was repress any kind of research into alternative methods, and then say the absence of evidence is evidence of absence, which is completely not science.
No.
You know, it is radically insane. And now the research is coming through on fasting. The research is coming through on minerals and vitamins. The research is coming through strong and fast, and has been for the last 20 years. That not only does it work, but it actually is a cure. It is not reversal of symptoms. It is a cure.
Yeah.
And that is changes. Like, this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It the same way like the makeup industry would collapse overnight, so would the medical industry as we know it. So would the pharmaceutical industry as we understand it.
Yeah.
If we were basing our our current medical system on what the scientific truth is based on what we're currently being taught. Now, what most people don't know is that the half-life of medicine is around 22 years. And that means every 22 years, everything we know, this is how fast science is moving, right? How fast everything is moving, is that once every 22 years, pretty much everything we know becomes redundant.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think about 22 years ago, genes were permanent. Now epigenetics, environment changes genes and emotions change genes. You go back 22 years and you had no control. Now we know that everything you think, everything you eat affects everything. We know that a plant-based diet switches off 200 disease-causing genes and opens up more than 400 disease prevention genes.
Yeah.
So things that we didn't know are suddenly radically real. And there are other things coming into light that I didn't even ever expect. Supplements like NMN, and which we didn't know were like enzymes that are necessary to stop what's it called, us not being able to accurately replicate stem cells, and stem cell therapy, and many other things that weren't even in the book are now in the book. Like I've got a couple of clients that have cancer, and before they would just have had the option of 1 or 2 types of chemo.
Yeah.
Now they can have a test where they're if they want to go down that route, their tumor is tested on over 300 different types of chemotherapy to find out the one that will work for them.
Yeah.
Right. So things have moved on, but that is not what we're being told. And that's not what people are facing when they go into the system. And they're not even told the basics. Like they're told that potentially a chemotherapy can reverse, their tumors, but they're not told that water fasting could do the same thing in 3 months.
Yeah.
And that there are doctor-based clinics in the US, in Mexico, in Europe that are supervising this as a proper medical treatment that they can get based on their insurance.
Wow.
So they're not given those options, and then they just get told, if you don't do what we say, then you're not going to get any treatment. And I had one of my clients get that just 2 days ago. She thought she was going to get treatment in Germany, and then they asked her to sign a piece of paper that said, unless you give us consent to remove whatever organs you want to move, do whatever you want to do, then you are not entitled to treatment in this country.
Wow.
And she's pretty traditional, because I personally believe that when you support someone, you support them on their health path. It's not your job to choose their path.
No.
It's your job to walk with them without judgment and with unconditional love. So I go with people on their journey. It's not my job to control the journey, right? But she's pretty traditional. And even in the very traditional sense, she was feeling very much not just judged, but controlled.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there going, something is definitely profoundly out of balance. Like profoundly out of balance.
Absolutely. But illnesses like cancer are so emotive as well, aren't they? When somebody gets a cancer diagnosis, their whole world falls apart. And they feel compelled to listen to the doctor and do whatever the doctor says. And I've had a client who did exactly that. I gave him alternatives. I shared a whole range of different things, but he was so emotionally bought into the doctors because of the cancer diagnosis. He did the full treatment of chemotherapy. And just recently, he's having blood problems. And he told me that the consultant that he saw said, we think you have leukemia as a direct result of the chemotherapy that you took 4 years ago. I mean, I know it's toxic, but I didn't realize that it gave rebound cancer. I mean, that is, and the consultant told him that.
It's, okay, so let's go one step at a time. Like you said, first things first, most people aren't aware that chemo is a byproduct of poisons from the Second World War, right? And they're also not aware, like you said, that okay, so this is something you learn when you study hypnosis, but all that's necessary to put somebody in a state of trance is a shock followed by a command, right? Cancer diagnosis is a shock.
Yeah.
Right? And what you are going to do to get better is the command. Especially if somebody in a white lab coat in a position of authority tells you that is what you're going to do. You put them in a state of trance. It's not the doctor's job. It is not anybody's job to tell a patient what they're going to do. It's our job, or their job, because I'm not a doctor. I'm a medical intuitive. Their job is to offer you all the options and to help you make a choice. That's what first do no harm means.
An informed choice.
An informed choice. And like you said, if someone's just telling you chemo's the only option, you're going to take it, particularly if you think they are the most informed, the best well-trained. But doctors do less than 1 day of nutrition training within their medical system. They're actually lied to. And the number of doctors that I train and I work with, that's one of their greatest grievances, because you don't become a doctor unless you want to save lives. Exactly. They don't go in there to watch people die. You know, they go in there to help people. And I think it's one of the biggest betrayals, not just of the patients, but of the doctors, that they have been systemically trained to ignore what's available and what's been used for centuries. Because before this whole Rockefeller thing, all of the medical textbooks had herbs. All of the medical textbooks had emotions. All of the medical textbooks taught a much more holistic approach. They didn't just teach pharmaceuticals. Like it's not the doctor so much as it is what I almost call like willful blindness. That's what I think it is as a crime. It is the unwillingness to look at everything that's there, because the amount of corruption is so great that it would cost you persecution, or it would cost you your job.
Yeah, yeah. And when you understand that the drugs that they're trained on, the training comes from pharmaceutical reps, so the pharmacy is training the doctors on the drugs. And at the end of the day, the doctors are analysts, really. What are your symptoms? They gather all the symptoms together, they throw a diagnosis out at you, and then they match that diagnosis with a pill. This is the pill you need for that diagnosis.
No, and it's insane to the extent that they choose people, like the process for getting into medical school is them choosing the people who are seeking the most approval.
Yeah.
Right? It's already like you have to get the highest grades. You have to be willing to sacrifice your nights, your days, your everything. You do not get into this. Like I went to law school. You do not get in there without showing them that you are a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Right? That you want approval more than anything.
Yeah. And you'll follow the rules.
And you'll follow the rules, and you won't question. And that if you do question, you're the person that will like feel the most vulnerable, or the most likely to question yourself or think you're wrong. So I think they systemically screen the population for people with worthiness issues to have less resistance, to have more, they only want applicants that they can program.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, which is really, a shameful use of psychological analysis or psychological tests. But it is what it is, because otherwise you get in there and you realize this is like what happened with me with law school. I got in there and I wanted to make the world a better place. I wanted to implement justice. And when I got in there and I was like, this is not what this is, right? This is not what this is. This is not what I was taught growing up. This has nothing to do with justice. What happens? You get out. You're like, this is not the truth. This is not what's going on, right?
And
because your integrity, boom.
Yeah, but it takes courage to say, no, actually, I was wrong. This isn't what I thought it was, and step outside of that.
Way more than courage. Like I've never killed someone because of my diagnosis. I've never made a medical mistake that cost someone their life or that gave them cancer. I haven't done that. I don't know the guilt that you would have to face if you knew that someone had lied to you, and as a result, you'd implemented a protocol or a treatment that had harmed so many people. The trauma response makes perfect sense. The PTSD makes perfect sense. The denial makes perfect sense from a psychological perspective.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it comes along with the grieving process, doesn't it? For grieving the life that you had, the knowledge that you thought you had, and now it's all shattered and changed.
It's completely radical that we went from thinking that prescribing a walk was a joke, right? And that it was ignoring the client's needs, to understanding that sending them back to nature is one of the most radical acts of healing that you can perform. It's quite 180 flip on the head.
Yeah.
I think particularly with any disease has a collective consciousness, right? It's not just our thoughts, it's everybody that's lived that story.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very powerful pull. And that's one of the things that I teach people to unplug from, because you can use it for better or worse. You can plug into the collective consciousness of people that have died, and you can plug into the collective consciousness of people who have recovered, and who have completely gone into remission and who are living, happy, thriving lives after this. But in the beginning, like I said, when it comes from a place of shock and you still overcoming your own denial, right? I think most people get sucked into whatever collective consciousness they're the closest to, and they can't swim against the tide. They can't get out.
No, because it's groupthink, isn't it? Like, was it Ash or Milgram in the 50s, 60s showed that, people will do what it takes to stay within that group, to be accepted by the group, rather than stand up for themselves and step outside. But the tests also showed that for one person that stepped outside, other people would then follow. So if we can be maintained within groupthink and told what to think, and like the programming starting with the children young about medicines and injections and foods, and we've given that programming that when we step outside, I mean, I have a lot, well, not a lot, but there are people around me that think I'm a bit crazy because I'm not part of that group think. I think differently. And not everybody has got the confidence and the courage to step outside that and go, actually, no, I don't want to think like that. I want to think differently. And these are my thoughts and beliefs. And at the end of the day, if we make that conscious choice, we can choose our thoughts and beliefs. We don't have to go along with the crowd and their consciousness and their beliefs.
If you look at it from an unconscious level, the reason people are so afraid of rejection is because, historically speaking, rejection meant death. If they threw you out of the village, you weren't going to survive a difficult winter, right? No fire, no food, no resources. And those are the two biggest unconscious fears, death and rejection, because rejection means death, right? So 100%. And what I think is really interesting is that regardless of whether it's religious abuse or scientific abuse or whatever control system you're in, the way that they get you to comply is to tell you that you will die. Even religions, like, you will lose eternal life. And it's like, well, you're going to lose physical life. There's no way out of it. It's, the way things are. But this idea that we will die if we don't do as we're told.
And then the fear around death as well, because people fear death.
Yeah.
And ultimately, when you unpack that, it's not the actual dying that they fear, it's the how they're going to die and the potential suffering. But ultimately, anything that causes fear around death causes chaos and panic within people.
Death is a very powerful archetype. And archetypes are a spectrum. They go from being our deepest shadow to our greatest illumination. So at its deepest unconscious, the death archetype is like like that big guy with the dark hood and the scepter and the executioner almost. And at its height, you're looking at Archangel Azrael. You're looking at, the manifestation of death as a rebirth into eternal life. So it's a completely different illumination, as it were, when you're journeying through. But if you think that every life we've lived, we've had a birth, we've had a death.
Yeah.
Right? Our death pulls us like with as much momentum as our birth does. And most people who start becoming aware of their other lifetimes, past, parallel, future, interdimensional, whatever, if you do not make a conscious effort to heal your deaths, right? Then when somebody says the word, painful death, all the deaths that you've ever died that are traumatic come to the surface.
Yeah.
And you don't know that's what's going on.
No, you just feel that fear.
Yeah. And it's the same thing. Like when you come across it with archetypes that are cross lifetime. So for example, every lifetime you've been a child. So the child archetype is the same. People are like, oh my God, I've been working on my inner child forever and I never get to the bottom of this. And it's like, well, yeah, you got to the bottom of your own childhood, but you've had many childhoods.
Yeah.
These issues are large, you're no longer dealing with your individual story. You're now dealing with a collective consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's particularly powerful with dying a good death, because we live in a culture that does not, it chooses to ignore death, and a good death is a very powerful healing.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we've gone from a place of where we surrounded family and friends to have a good death to, it seems like, life at whatever cost. I mean, I lived out in America and people were like, I want to live till I'm 103. I don't want to die. You need to keep me alive. I'm like, but where's your quality? You're bedbound. And I'm all for, let's have quality of life rather than quantity of life. Yes, quantity is great, But if we're ailing and suffering and we've got no life, why can we not have the last part of our life as quality and die when the time is right for us to die, rather than keep us alive on drugs but have no life, no quality?
Oh, it's such a, like you said, a deep topic. And there's so much, like you said, that's the prevention, because people can very much, I don't know if you've heard of the True North Health Clinic in America, but they're a medically operated water fasting clinic, probably the biggest in the world, that does their own independent research. And he is, I think, now well into his 70s, and he looks like he's in his early 40s.
Wow.
He does not have a health problem, and his parents are well into their 90s, and both of them are active, playing tennis, completely fit.
Yeah.
And he said that his mother tells him, if you're going to put people on this diet, then you have to warn them to make younger friends, because all of their friends have gone.
Wow. Yeah.
Right? So do I think quality of life and aging is completely possible? Yes.
Yeah.
Do I think it involves huge amounts of sacrifice? No. But do I think we have to completely, it's different, not difficult.
Yeah. And
You
it's a
know?
commitment.
It's a commitment. But at the end of the day, so is suffering. Suffering is a commitment, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of, like you said, experience or quality.
Yeah.
You know, gosh, and it doesn't just take, it doesn't just take our lives. So many of our decisions, particularly as women around our health, take so much from children, take so much from our partners. It's the number of children that are struggling because of decisions that, like I said, we weren't even made aware of when we were pregnant, or postpartum, and we didn't understand the nutritional deficiencies or the requirements or the sleep, or there's a lot of responsibility to be healthy, to make decisions that keep us strong.
Yeah.
And I've done, but long before I decided to specialize in medical intuition, I was doing healing, and you end up listening a lot to people suffering. That's the majority of your life, and most of that comes from watching the people we love suffer.
Yeah.
Whether emotionally, mentally, it doesn't matter. We cannot stand to see people we love in pain.
No. And when we try and reach out to help them, they're not always receptive either. And that was one of my biggest hurdles, was accepting that they are rejecting my offer of help because it doesn't align with what they want. They are fully committed to whatever it is that they've got. They believe the doctor. They believe they're going to get a pill for it that will help the suffering, and can't see my point of view, which is fine. It's their choice. But that pained me for a long, long time, because it's a rejection. And it's like, but I know if you do this, this will really help you, and you won't need that pill, and the suffering and the pain and everything will stop. But it ultimately is their choice. And as healers, that is a lesson in and of itself for us, to allow that person to be and do what they choose to be and do, and what the help we want to give is rejected, and we have to be okay with that, because, as you said previously, it's not our choice, it's their choice. All we can do is open doors and say, but you've also got these options as well as what the doctor said, if you choose to take them.
Free will is not like a small law. Free will is an ultimate law of the universe.
Yeah.
And it's a master thing. Like, unconditionally accepting somebody can sometimes cause an instant healing, right? Which is why counseling works, like unconditional positive regard, unconditional acceptance, unconditional love. These are powerful healings in and of themselves, right? What's beautiful about you is that you really understand that not only can you help, but that you can make a huge difference in people's lives, right? It takes time to talk somebody out of shock. It takes time to talk somebody out of shock. And yes, you 100% have to accept people's free will, but you also have to start calling in and believing that there are lots of people who are not only ready, but deeply and profoundly grateful for where you are and what you have to offer, and that will do everything that you say exactly as you say it. And the moment you trust that that's true. And there are billions of people on the planet. Trust me when I say that that is true,
Yeah.
right? You start, you really don't get people like that very much anymore. I don't think I've had someone like that in a long time.
No.
And partly it's because those people then become scared of you because they know what you're going to say if they come near you. And partly it's because you start getting the testimonials, you start getting the results, right? That your faith in yourself gets so strong that you know that, like I said, their rejection is not about you, it's about them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you also know, and this is super important, because you have a life-saving gift. And every moment that you waste with somebody who's not ready is a moment that you could have given to somebody who is.
Yeah. That was such a hard lesson for me to learn, though, because I went into nursing to save the world. Realized what I was doing. So I left nursing, deregistered, and I went into health coaching to save the world. But it was part of my own healing journey. I dealt with all the physical, the mental, and physical, spiritual, and mental stuff. But it wasn't until I started coaching I dealt with the emotional part of the healing that I needed. And part of that was learning to allow people to be who they want to be, not who I want them to be, and allow them, if they don't want to take my advice, if they want to go to the doctors and pop a pill, I had to be okay with that. And that took me a little while to get over, because it's like, I see what you're doing to yourself. I can help make you understand that there's other ways. And I felt very rejected, but that was a trauma response in me. And it took me a couple of years to heal that.
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. I don't think that's a trauma response in you. I think that, like you said, it's kind of like the Milgram experiment. I think that a lot of therapy is very good, but the parts of it that tell us to stop caring about what other people do, regardless of what they do, I think that's not only unrealistic, I think it creates apathy, right? I think that if you can watch another person choose a path that's going to kill them, that's no different than say that you should be okay with somebody doing drugs or smoking and not feel anything. The only way to do that is for you not to care. And the reason you're so good at what you do is because you do care.
Deeply.
Right. And I think the reason those people pull you in is because on an unconscious level, there's a part of them that wants to fight. There's a part of them that remembers how to advocate for themselves and how to fight for themselves and how to do what's right no matter what. And you kind of embody that warrior archetype really strong. You have such an energy of, I'm going to do the right thing and I don't care what anyone else thinks. You know? So I think it's a miracle that you care so much. I don't think it comes from judgment. I think probably from trauma, because it is traumatic watching people you love and care about do something that's going to kill them because somebody told them to do it because they want to make money out of it.
Yeah. I'll certainly keep them in a sick role.
Yeah, it's really not good. I mean, I don't understand any other culture in society that would gaslight us to this extent and go, hey, you're crazy for thinking somebody should get better. It's like, yeah, I think you need to take a look in the mirror and leave me alone.
Yeah.
It's my job to want what's best for my fellow man. It's my job to, care and to protect and to be a guardian of that. It's not my job to go quiet because you think they should do whatever they want to do. They're not making this decision from a place of strength. They're making this decision from a place of profound fear because you've lied to them for their whole lives.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to live with the consequences of your lie. So you tell me, are you telling me to shut up because of integrity or my spiritual growth? Or are you telling me to shut up because you're going to have to pay a big bill if I don't?
Yeah. And fear sells.
Yeah, it's not. I think your fierceness is pretty incredible.
Thank you. It comes from deep, deep within.
It needs to come out. It's beautiful. It needs to do exactly what it's doing. People sometimes, it's like it's a part of the divine mother archetype. Sometimes people need to be cradled. They need to be carried. There are places where they can't walk by themselves, and that's where God carries them.
Yeah.
And yes, they can turn you down, but that caring, the fact that you do give a damn, don't ever let that go.
No. I have to put it on a back burner sometimes because, it doesn't align with what they want, but it's still there deep inside of me. And I just have to, I've learned to accept you know, that they don't want my advice, and that they don't want my help. And I'm okay with that now. It still hurts a bit, but I'm okay with it because that's their choice. And
It's
I
hard to
respect their
accept.
choice.
Very often we accept that people want to die before they do.
Yeah.
Um, that's quite hard, but it's very true. There is, like, one of the most controversial things that I teach is that if you manifest a terminal illness on some level of your consciousness, you don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So, and there's, how many times in life do we wish we were dead?
Yeah. Yeah. And people
So,
just say it out loud as well.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's hard for us to accept, but it's it is the, sometimes that's their choice. You
Yes.
know, if it wasn't an illness, they choose something else, whether it's joining the army or whether they are having an accident. Sometimes people just don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And from people like ourselves understand as well the soul contract involved in that, and that their life will end when their soul contract ends. Whether they're young, middle-aged or old, it's not about what's going on in their lives, it's about when their soul contract is up.
And very often, like, so much of, like, if you look at life plans, I'd say around 75% of a life is, you know, created, and about 25% of the life is agreed before.
Right.
You know, like with your divine timings, your death doors, which is what you're talking about, with the lessons that you came to learn. And depending on what level of consciousness you go into the reincarnation wheel with, like you said, you either know you can renegotiate or you don't. You know,
Yes.
and you can complete lessons faster or you can complete them slower. And um, but very often it's exactly what you're saying. Like, people live lives very unconsciously, and they are taught to do that.
Yes.
You know, and then when you are playing life from a shallow end and life reveals its true nature, which is incredibly deep, you're out of your depth, you're overwhelmed, you don't
Yeah.
know how to meet what's being pulled from you, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And,
so
and it's easy to live life unconsciously on autopilot from the subconscious mind, because we've done whatever we've done so many times. We can do it unconsciously on autopilot. But becoming conscious and in that moment takes a lot of effort. It's something you have to learn to do, and a lot of people haven't learned that. They may become conscious for fleeting seconds in time, in certain times, but the majority of their life is spent on running on unconscious programs.
Oh, you know, and they know, this is the thing, like, if you look at this, I do believe in systems, right? I do think that there's divine right order, just like there are, you know, rings in a tree. I do think, like, embryos become a baby. I do think you need systems. But I think when you then use those systems to harm instead of, you know, return humanity to wholeness, there's something wrong.
Yeah,
But it's very much there, give me the child and I'll give you the man.
yeah,
You know, and I find it very disturbing, even with healers, when they say to me, I want to get this into the education system. And I'm like, the only thing that should be near a child is its mother, right? That soul chose that person. We shouldn't even be ripping children away from their mothers to put them into systems, but before they're even, you know,
yeah,
old enough to verbalize. Like, there's something deeply wrong with a system that wants that level of control.
yeah,
And it's really, you know, it's so hard to, like you said, know the truth and have these people tell you. I mean, the number of people try to tell me, oh, you know, your son would be better off we put him in nursery or something like that. And I'm like, he's not leaving my side. You'll have to fight me,
yeah,
you know? But there's still such a strong belief going in with the everything is better than family, and a proactive destruction of community
yeah,
that is manifesting as disease, you know,
yeah,
because isolation breeds disease. It
absolutely.
creates mental health issues. People need community.
Yeah,
And what's interesting as well is that the most powerful entities on the planet are not companies the way people think. They're families, because those families own those companies.
yes, yeah. And you only have to look into third world and tribes people. You know, everybody's got a role within the tribe, and everybody's looked after by everybody else. And it's about the community, totally about the community. Nobody is better or worse than anybody. Everybody's brought up with given roles that suit their skill sets, their knowledge, their personas. But then you look at our Western world, our civilized world, and our families are all separated, and people go to different countries looking for work, different towns, they're miles away, and they are separated so much. And that family community has been totally dismantled.
And I think they've done things, especially to the mother-child relationship, because the research that if you look at animals, for example, if you separate a mother and her young when the babies are born, she can't recognize them. She often kills them. She often abuses them. And they are separating mothers and babies at birth.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there going, and now you're pretending you don't understand what's happening. Right? It's crazy what's happening. They're separating them with birth drugs, which completely changes the biochemistry and the hormonal attachment. They're separating them physically because the baby has to get weighed and cleaned and taken away from you, and then that stops the breast milk and everything else. And it's absolutely mad. And then you have to go back to work really quickly so you can provide, right? So then it's snatched from you. Particularly in America, it's less than 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Right? And you're sitting there going, okay, you're creating a psychopathic tank here, because there's no animal in the nature kingdom, with the exception of reptiles, that you can do this to, that will not have severe psychotic issues.
Yeah.
And they're pretending that they don't know what they're doing, but of course they do. This is obvious in the research. And they're diagnosing every mother that doesn't want to be separated from her child with postnatal depression. Like, oh, you're depressed. And it's like, yeah, they took the baby. They took the baby. It's insane.
Yeah. My firstborn was taken from me for 5 hours. I was 22 when I had him, and they said, oh, we'll put him up in the nursery, but the nursery's full, so the ward's full, so you can't go, you've got to stay here. 5 hours. I'm like, I need to go. I'm not staying in this room a moment longer. I need to go and be with my baby. Where have you put him? And that was back in 1987 when I had my son. And it's like 5 hours. But, I was young, very naive, had no idea what was going on, just believed in the system because that's how I was raised. But now I see the world totally differently.
Oh, that fierce mother. Like, I'm quite shy, believe it or not, when you put me in with around other people. And it was the first time after my son was born that this whole fierce mother bear thing really came out. I didn't give a damn what anyone thought of me. And the hospital people, they all called me the mother. Because I wouldn't let them anywhere near him. But it was still deeply traumatic to me that I was worried that if I fell asleep, they'd take him away, because they were so intent on taking him away. And even, like I said, this energy of like, you're the problem for wanting to be with your kid, and you should just let us do what we want to do. And I was like, yeah, that's not how that's not how this is going to work. But this energy of you should not protect the child, what we're talking, you should not care what happens. This apathy is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're led to believe that you're in the right place, doing the right thing, and the staff are doing the right thing. But yet there's a void left inside you when you're doing what you're told to do, but it just doesn't feel right.
Because it isn't. And there's no way that a few generations of cultural conditioning can undo thousands and thousands of years of ancestral programming. And these things are initiations. It's like what you said, when you see somebody going towards a death door, you are hardwired from your community, from everything that is human, to help, to serve, to heal. Right? What if it was your husband? What if it was your son? What if it was your partner? You are hardwired for compassion. You're not hardwired for apathy. Apathy is a trauma response. Right? It's a dissociation response. So it takes a lot to teach you to become apathetic. They have to isolate people. They have to separate people. They have to, keep them separate. It takes years of you not being with your child before that child no longer cares about you.
Yeah.
Right? And then they teach you it's normal. Your teenager shouldn't like you. Your daughter shouldn't like you.
Yeah.
Right? And you're sitting there going, that is completely inaccurate on every single level of existence.
Yes.
Right? What you're dealing with is abandonment issues because you abandoned your kid. You didn't do it intentionally, but they don't see you.
No.
right? So how do you expect them to bond to somebody they never see? And by the time they do see you, you're so exhausted from the person you were with all day working for that you've got no energy left for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a condition from society. We're conditioned to believe that's what we should be doing.
Oh, we're conditioned. It's so funny. I was listening to some of them. There's some really powerful female gurus in India teaching original divine feminine stuff. And one of them was like, you know how when you get a gift from a man, everybody in the West gives you a hard time about it? And we were like, yes. And they're like, oh, he shouldn't be doing that. And it's like, against your female independence. And she's like, all those women that are giving you a hard time are also sleeping with men and not getting any gifts, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And she's like, that's the provider instinct. They're hardwired to provide, protect, because women take care of infants and infants are vulnerable, and that makes women vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. And the people giving you a hard time are reflecting their own issues onto you. Yeah, totally.
But the mother wound is aching. And I think it's causing a lot, particularly in the West, it's causing a huge chasm because they are attacking mothers at a rate that they've never attacked them before.
Yeah.
And I think they're disguising it as female independence.
Yes.
And I think that it's nothing to do with female independence. If they valued women, they would pay them to do what women do. And that includes be mothers and caregivers and teachers. It does not just include doing men's jobs. Women were never supposed to be men. Women are supposed to be women. And that role is valuable in however it manifests. Right?
Well, women were taken into work after was it the First or the Second World War? I can't remember. To pay tax. It was purely a ploy to get women to work, to pay tax, to put more money into the government. That was how it was. But women were told that it was to cover the men who've gone to war and the deficits. And of course, if you've got both people in the couple going out to work, paying more tax, your childcare then is dependent on other people, the state, the school. So it's all, you can see how it all fits in together.
Oh, it's so dark. The whole of the First World War was literally a genocide. And it was a genocide because it was the first time that they'd experimented with teaching lower class children how to critically think. And what it led to was basically the first revolutions across Europe, the massive enlightenments, the implementation of democracy, the end of the aristocracy. Right? And if you look at what was happening politically before the First World War, women were going for rights, and they weren't just going to be men. They were going for equal rights as women, right? Men were getting together their unions, and they were fighting for fair wages and for the vote, because they didn't even have the vote before the First World War, right? And then amazingly, there's a war that wipes out the whole of that generation. Convenient, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? Convenient. And then, of course, the women, like you said, have to go to work because they can't provide, and there's no one else to provide. And then the children are abandoned, and those kids grow up without parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And then the school system has to set in place. The very same school system they conveniently used for colonialization in India, Brazil, and the rest of the planet to keep those systems under control.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's dark when you look at it, because that's where we're facing the darkness is what brings the light in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you can see the light from the darkness. It's more evident.
You then that's what I mean. You then protect, you defend, you have conversations, you do things that other people, you move in a different way.
Yeah.
But I think it's very much what we're discussing. Like, illness is a manifestation of fear, right? And we live in a world that's still predominantly based on control and fear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's changing.
It's changing, and it's good. It's changing faster because as fast as they are removing like real life community, we are creating it in different ways, whether it's online or and we have a level of communication that's never been available before.
Yes.
And scalability that's never been available before, because whereas before we were separated by country and distance and time, the fact that most of my clients in India and America, and I'm in the UK.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it's much harder to control community. It's quite an interesting evolution. But I don't think they understand how it's going to evolve yet, and I don't think they've figured out particularly their methods of control yet. I think they're still trying to figure that out.
Yeah. And in the meantime, there's much more light coming through, and more people becoming awake and coming out of autopilot, and looking at what they're doing consciously and how that's affecting themselves, their family, their lives.
There's a lot of people returning to themselves, and there's a lot of people leading communities because they've got free platforms for the first time ever that provide free marketing and free visibility in a way that's just never been available before.
Yeah.
You know, and that increases the level of impact one person can have on a monumental scale.
Yeah. And as Joe Dispenza says, and I use that in the start of my book, when you see one person doing what you think is impossible, it opens your eyes to the possibilities and helps you to change your belief that something is possible. And here we are. You know, we're here. We're stepping out of that norm that we've been raised in, to show people it is possible. Healing's possible. The bringing in the light is possible. The change is possible.
Yep.
And we're stepping out and being the way showers to help other people.
I think there's been such a rebirth with the homeschooling movement. There's been a really high rebirth with the alternative health community. I think never before have we been healing this many people this much, particularly after what happened with COVID, where the hospitals shut down.
Yeah.
And that's where my clinic exploded. That's actually when I created my modality, because suddenly I couldn't help everybody. You know, before there'd always been a steady stream, but I'd never had a waiting list, and I never had that dread of knowing that if I couldn't get to somebody, maybe nobody was going to get to them.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what created that shift where I was like, okay, I can't be one of the only ones. There has to be lots of people who can do this.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of people went through that transformation, and I think particularly with the world having that hit and the fear, the type of control coming from disease, I think that really triggered my mother bear thing on a huge level, because I was like, literally, I was like, not on my watch. Are you freaking kidding me? Like, seriously, I was just like, you're gonna like scare them using like a plague. Are you friggin' kidding me? You know, and it was so interesting to see how many people lit up at the same time, because so many people were like, I'm gonna go into hiding, and so many people were like, screw this.
Yeah.
I'm all in. You know, and I think it's like that phrase in the Course in Miracles where it says, you know, at the moment of the deepest darkness, there's the brightest light, and you either decide whether you're going to light up or whether you're going to back down.
Yes.
You know? And I think so many people were like, no, we're going to step up. We're going to start leading more. We're going to start creating more. We're going to start serving more. And in ways, like with the True North Health Clinic, like with what you're doing, that are sustainable long term, you know, that create a democratic health system that is for the people and not for pharmaceuticals.
Yes.
You know, and they're getting organized. And this is the thing about fear. Armies are organized.
Yeah.
Right? It's mass organized murder, and it's international.
Yeah.
Right? We are now creating the same thing as hospitals, because we should have that. Why shouldn't we have that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, why shouldn't we have healers as organized and as, like you said, systemized, that anybody can access what they need whenever they need it?
Absolutely. And it's bringing communities together. And that's what we're trying to do. You know, with my course, with my book, I've brought healers together. So people who read my course, read my book, do my course, can reach out to those people, to, you know, for specific help. But it's helping people come together as well as bigger communities. And it doesn't have to just be local. I mean, it can be local, but we can be global because of the internet, the communications. So there's no reason why we can't connect with people anywhere in the world, as long as they've got internet, to grow these communities, to grow the health clinics, to grow like-minded people and bring people together in their own towns, in their own countries, but to meet other people as well globally.
It's it's not just 100% possible. You can see the online clinics popping up. You can see people starting to get organized, and it's starting to become a movement. And I think medicine needs to be a movement, especially real democratic medicine. It needs to be a movement. It needs to be a movement with momentum, because I think on a very deep level, it is a race now to see who is able to hold this space first, and I'm really excited about the things that I'm seeing, and I'm very what's the word? I'm very inspired by how quickly people figure things out, how quickly people master things, because a lot of them, it's like you said, it's very easy to undo a couple of 100 years of cultural conditioning, but especially medicine, it's been in humanity for generations. Nobody wants to watch people they love get hurt. So it comes back very quickly when you teach them that they have the sovereignty to create their body, that they have the sovereignty to stop harming Mother Nature, right? Because they have everything that they need to heal.
They are the solution to their own problems. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're here to remind them, that they are the healers. They can do it. We're just holding their hand and reminding them that they are their own solutions.
Like you said, I think I think particularly the 90s and 80s generation, I think, like you said, what we're moving towards is an interdependent community, that really functions as a collective force, but also recognizes divine right order and recognizes hierarchy. Because I think what was happening before was they were destroying all sense of order and all sense of hierarchy. And God is organized. There's a reason plants and trees and stuff grow together in an ecosystem. It is a system, and any part of the system that's damaged affects the other. And humans need to return to healed systems, but they can't live without them. It's not the way nature's wired.
No, we're designed to be part of communities.
And there's different seasons, and this is what people have to realize, because it's very easy to not understand somebody else's place within a system, or to only see the good side or only see the downside. But every place has a light and a shadow. Every place has the easy bits and the hard places. And that's where unconditional respect becomes available, because even if you don't understand where someone is, you get that there is a reason that they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. And respect the reason that they are there and the place that they are at.
Yeah, which is, I think that's something that it's starting to be reborn now, this idea of, and you can see, like, especially with Scotland, they're having elections and it's going a bit bonkers, because they no longer understand how to let people be different.
No.
And a democracy can't exist without diversity.
I know. We're being melded together and put into boxes.
Yeah, I wish God made clones, but that's not how it works. That's not how it works. It might be how some people want it to work, but God does not make clones. People are not all sheep. Otherwise, they'd have a much easier time of it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's quite funny when you try and see. It's probably like, I always say that teaching baby healers is like herding cats. Like kittens, they all want to do their own thing, and they're all going in different directions, and they're all adorable, and they drive you mad.
Yes.
Any mother that's ever had kids knows that there's no two that are alike. They're always completely different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this clone thing, they're definitely trying.
For sure. Absolutely. Some crazy things going on.
Yeah. I think that there's going to be a big shift, and it's already starting to happen, because you can see how much, like I said, people are rising and they're talking back, and they're calling out things that were going on silently for a very long time, and they're becoming I think so much was happening both on the dark web, but also on a political level that was hidden, that now, and I think this is what they didn't really estimate would happen by sending everybody home, is that sending everybody home meant they had a lot of time to learn how to get good with technology.
And rekindle the family values as well, and understand what they've been missing out on.
a lot of people didn't go back to work. A lot of people, like, it completely changed who they were forever in a very good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So everything's a double-edged sword in that sense, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll see, because I think that it's definitely growing. I think momentum is definitely picking up, and I think it's becoming harder and harder to like I said, create the apathy. People are starting to be able to question things.
Yeah.
And it's becoming easier to go, wait a minute, is this a diagnosis or is this a sales pitch? Because these are very different things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the more people that speak out, the more people listen. And even if they're not on board, we're planting seeds that, there are alternatives.
It's quite scary how quickly things can happen. Like, I remember being in my first medical intuitive anatomy class, which is a Theta Healing class for teaching medical intuitives. And I was there as an assistant, and my teacher pulled somebody up because we were watching a video. You watch videos to basically get triggered, so your stuff comes up, and then you do the healing session on what comes up. And we were watching these little videos on how my body works. And in the body, it was like the video on kidneys. So of course, the woman in the class that's struggling with renal failure, it faints, right? So then my teacher calls her up in front of the class to do a healing, and by the time she gets to the hospital, she no longer has a kidney problem.
Oh, fabulous.
Right? And that's the thing. When you see the impossible, you're suddenly going, whoa, what the hell just happened? How can I do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Right? And it's one of those things that you start to realize things don't have to take a long time. They don't have to be complicated. The number of people that long before I was specifically specializing in medical intuition would come to heal resentment, and their illness would dissolve, or their kidneys would get better, or their hormone issues would go. Right? Many people that would come to work on financial issues, and suddenly, because it was that was causing all the stress, their health issues would disappear.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It's so interlinked.
It's really deeply interlinked, but the more that you see it, the easier it becomes. And you also realize that you don't have to have, like, one of the things that I realized in the very beginning is that I never had to discuss the healing to get the healing. A lot of people were very willing to work on what was actually making them sick, as long as I never mentioned that was about the illness.
Yeah.
Right? Because they weren't, in their mind, it didn't have anything to do with it. But it was to me, it was a direct causal link. If you're stressed all the time, your immune system is down.
Sure.
Right? If you had child abuse, you're going to have gut issues, and you're not going to be able to regulate your nervous system.
Yeah.
So it's very, as I said, when I think that God meets us where we are. A lot of it is like, I remember being on the airplane to Montana to do my training, because with Theta Healing, which I used to do before I started my own modality, what you do is you do the practitioners, and then you have to actually go to the founder to do the teachers. So I had to fly all the way to Montana to do the teachers. But of course, America's full of very, very opinionated Christians, right? And here I find myself sitting on a plane next to a really lovely old man with a heart condition that believes in Jesus Christ more than anything, right? So I remember he talked to me for more than 3 hours, and the healing was going on the entire time. But not once did I tell him, I spoke his language. I talked about the way, everything I said was about Jesus. I didn't try and talk about what I believed in or what was true, what wasn't true. And I think a lot of that is, it makes it so easy for medical intuitives, because you're able to move the way the person moves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And God will put you next to the person that, like you said, they've been praying for a miracle. That man prays every night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And maybe there just wasn't a person in his church or whatever that he felt he could connect with for whatever reason. And then there you are on the plane.
Yeah.
Right. And if it hadn't been me, it would have been someone else. I'm sure God would have put someone on every corner for this guy until he finally decided to listen to someone. Right.
Yeah.
But I think that there's definitely an element of being non-denominational, of speaking the language of the person, of moving to the wound instead of focusing on the result or who's right.
Yes.
That can be very effective in getting the result without ever having to have a difficult conversation, or like getting into the politics or the religion or even that's one of the things that shifted very much for me as a healer, is that yes, the nutrition and the alternative stuff It does work, but there are a million ways to heal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
So some people do need the alternative, but some people it just takes a conversation. Some people it just takes like a Reiki session. Some people it wouldn't work that way. They need the nutrition because they've got toxins in their body, or they've been exposed to different things that need to come out.
Yeah.
But I used to very much believe there was only, maybe 3 or 4 ways. And then it was very much shown to me that that was very much my limitation. There are humans heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's quite fun to watch how they're going to find ways to heal.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're born to heal. We're innate healers. Most people just forgot.
Oh, I don't have to tell you. You don't have to tell your body. If someone cuts you, you don't have to say, okay, create the red blood cells, start the clotting. You don't have to, you just heal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I tell people that all the time, if your body can do that, why do you need to look at going to a doctor for other issues? Tap into your body. It knows.
I think the truth is the scariest thing for people. Even when I'm teaching medical intuitives, the number one block to them being able to see inside the body, to them being able to give an accurate scan, to them being able to perform a healing that give good results is they're afraid of the truth.
Yeah.
They want to be able to, most of us live our lives telling people what they want to hear, not telling people the truth.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I'm so pleased you came on today and you've made that conscious decision to tell the truth. And going all the way back to the beginning, I too had an underactive thyroid. And again, it was about not speaking our own truth, or that fear of speaking out and being judged. We just need to speak.
Yeah, doctors aren't scared of telling people they're going to die.
Wow.
It's just one of those things. It comes a point where it's okay to be who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. But we have to learn to accept that we can be who we really are.
Yep.
And not everybody's ready to accept that they can be who they really are. They're still in that people pleasing, don't want to be ostracized kind of a mode. And until they can accept that it's okay to be who you are, they will go on with the health problems.
Well, yeah. So if we break it down, like you said, the people pleaser mode, because that's very strong in both of us, right? If you are people pleasing, you are wearing a mask.
Yeah.
If you're wearing a mask and your deepest desire is to belong, you're wearing a mask, which means nobody you're interacting with knows who you actually are.
Yeah.
Right? So you are blocking yourself from having what you want on the deepest level. You want love and acceptance and belonging only comes from being who you really are. Fitting in comes from people pleasing.
Yeah.
Right? But this is the thing about the self-sabotage thing. You are worthy of belonging. So the ego is a tricky thing. The fear mind is a tricky thing. It goes, hey, if you people please, then you will get belonging. Actually, if you people please, you will never belong.
No, it's a superficial belonging to quite often a group of people who are not really your people either, because you're not the person who you are truly, authentically. So you're not really aligning with the group that you're with, because you're not being yourself, you're being somebody else to fit into that group. And I've found when you become the person you are meant to be, when you are truly aligned with your authentic self, people then who resonate with you come towards you, and the people who don't fall away. And for people pleasers, we have to be okay with losing those people that we thought were friends and that were part of our group, because they really weren't. They were aligned to a person who we were pretending to be to fit into that group.
Yeah, and like you said, like what's the thing about like people pleasing, especially with women, is that we think we're being good girls, right? But there's nothing good girl about lying.
No.
So if you're pretending to be someone else so someone will like you, that's manipulation, right? Ice cold manipulation. And if they don't like you when you reveal your true self, they have every right to be pissed at you for lying to them for 10, 20, 30 years, right? It's not fair to be like, you should just be able to take me as I am. It's like, well, you lied to them. They're not pissed at you because you're someone else. They're pissed at you because they thought you were being honest. And suddenly you're not. And how are they supposed to trust you if you were lying about who you are?
Yeah, totally.
It's not easy dealing with us either.
No. But as we learn and grow, we change and evolve, and different people come into our lives, and we keep healing, and it's a journey.
And you, like you said, you start to be around people. Like I've got very few. I don't think I actually have one person in my life anymore that doesn't believe in healing. That it doesn't, you know, like I said, you find your tribe.
Yes, you do, and here we are.
And here we are making more tribes.
Yes, growing our tribes. Oh, Skylar, I'm going to have to end it there. I've had a fantastic, wonderful conversation about anything and everything, but again, all bringing it back down to healing. So thank you for being a guest with me here on the podcast. Thank you also for writing a module for my Heal Yourself at Home course, and being part of this community that I'm trying to build of more like-minded people.
I really, really loved our conversation. It did get a bit dark feminine on us, but I think it needed to do that. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have discovered you, and I'm in awe of the community that you're building and the incredible work that you're doing. So if you guys are wondering whether or not to do Sarah's course, please do. It's going to change your life, and you came here for a reason.
Thank you, Sky.